So this is going to be one of those videos that has a $15 budget with a huge asterisk, and I'm going to talk about that here in a sec. So today we're going to be building a deck concept that we've already made very recently on the channel. A few weeks ago, I made a $15 Lord Xander the Collector deck, and the basic idea was that the deck destroyed friendships. Now, that's more clickbait than it is actual reality. The real way the deck plays is as an Archenemy deck. It creates a puzzle that your opponents need to solve, usually by kicking your teeth in. And so the deck is not going to have the highest win percentage, but it is going to create a lot of fun stories about people having to build up resources to deal with you, the major problem of the table. But I found that there is a new commander from Final Fantasy that does the job of Xander far better. This super villain Grixis style deck that I really wanted to play. Lord Xander's probably going to end up being the one that causes the most psychic damage still, because people really hate getting milled out. But in terms of card for card effectiveness, this one is far stronger, and he is Kefka Court Mage. Kefka has the ability to make everybody lose cards in their hand, which is something that Xander kinda did, but he focused it on a single player. But Kefka notably also has a draw engine attached to him, and he's got the ability to flip into a god form that, if a player plays something silly like an Orcish Bowmasters, will just kill you instantly. So you don't really want to do that all that often, but you do have access to it if you're dealing with a lot of players who aren't playing black decks, or decks that can punish you on your own turn. Now, the reason that I have to put a giant asterisk on the cost of this deck is, well, it's in two cards specifically. You see, Kefka himself is sitting at $5.50, well above what I'm usually comfortable playing a $15 commander at. But he's not the only card that is well above his price point. The other card that is in the deck that is well above his price point is Kefka Dancing Mad. He's sitting at $3, and I'm willing to say this is a $15 deck because I'm taking a gamble, and the gamble is based off of this right here. If we look at the actual trajectory for this card, we know that Kefka Dancing Mad, just Kefka Dancing Mad, was pre-sailing for $20. And then, once all of the pre-cons and everything came out, the price quickly plummeted during the pre-release to $4.25. And now that we're a couple days after the pre-release, he's gone down another $1.50 to $3.07. The full release of Final Fantasy happens this weekend, so I imagine that's going to drop the price even more, and we know that we are getting another wave of product for Final Fantasy later in July, which means, well, there's going to be so much of this product, and it's all going to be opened at such a high rate. I am very confident that Kefka Dancing Mad and Kefka himself are going to end up plummeting in price, making this deck closer to the $15 or $16 that I usually try to keep these decks to if they are in the $15 challenge. So there is my caveat. Yes, this is a $15 deck. No, it is not $15 at the time of making. I am doing a huge gamble to make sure that the prices for everything go down. I'm fairly certain that they will. That said, let's get into the deck. Kefka Dancing Mad is a Grixis and 2/4/5 commander who has a very powerful ability. Each time he enters or attacks, every player, including yourself, discards a card. Then you draw a card for every card type discarded this way. So ideally what you want to do with this is say, all right, everybody, let's put our card aside, and then we'll show which card we are discarding at the same time. But, you know, your group is gonna end up deciding if they want to do this in turn player priority or what have you. Like, honestly, you're always gonna get at least 2 cards out of Kefka whenever you attack with him or you drop him on the board. In my experience, when testing him and playing, he actually drew about 3 cards almost every time until a player was eliminated. Our core strategy is going to be a very aggressive one. We want to make sure that Kefka puts our opponents on a clock as fast as possible. And there's a couple ways to do this. Running very aggressive creatures and making sure that we can use his ability to deplete people's hands as fast as possible. One of the ways to deplete people's hands as fast as possible is playing an aggressive clone strategy. We're using 5 clones for this deck, but you can run more in yours, and trust me, it'll work just fine. The Copy Crook can clone and also give you access to Connive to dig through your deck faster. Vizier of Many Faces will allow you to clone from the graveyard and from the board. Naga Fleshcrafter is a clone that has a really cool renew ability where you can turn everything on your board into a non-legendary creature. So one of my favorites would be, hey, let's turn everything into a copy of Looter Ilkor, and I'm just going to draw a ton of cards in my deck. Then we've got Dax Duplicate, which is a way to clone a creature, and it also gives it Dethrone, which matters a little bit, not really all that much. And then we have Realms Sketching, which can be a ramp spell or a clone spell. It creates a copy of any target artifact, creature, or land, and notably, it does it for any on the board at all. If somebody's playing something you really want access to, like say a Grand Abolisher, just take the Grand Abolisher so that people can't do anything on your turn. Just figure out what the best thing on the board is to clone with this. You don't always have to clone your own things. As a real quick aside, remember that I am sponsored by Mana Pool, so if you want to pick up this deck and any others, then all you have to do is use the affiliate link in the description of this video. You'll be able to find that link right down here, and it will take you right to Mana Pool, and you'll be able to get your cards that way. And if you want to use my link and get this deck, then just go over to Mass Entry on Mana Pool after clicking my link, and then go to the deck and grab your Mass Entry from here. All right, back to the video. Thank you so much for that. You also want to have a bunch of group discard abilities that will be able to make sure that not only does your commander do discarding, but your 99 is doing it as well. Now, in the Xander deck, I had a lot of one-off discard in here. In this deck, we are actually trimming it down so that this deck can play more of a proper Archenemy game. So we are running only things that will do mass discard and repeatedly mass discard. So Sidrexis Spectre, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can make that player discard a card. Creeping Dread, when our upkeep comes up, everybody discards a card. Raven Man can pay 4 mana to make everybody discard a card, and he also makes Birds, which will work with our draw engine. That can sometimes be relevant. Scythe Spectre will deal combat damage to a player and then make everybody discard a card, and then he also has a burn effect attached to that as well. Larceny says anytime one of your creatures deals combat damage to a player, make them discard a card in their hand. And Tiny Bone says if any opponent discards a card, exile it, and now we get access to it. And he's got the same Raven Man ability of being able to make each opponent discard a card for 4 mana. This way, we are able to play a proper game of Archenemy. You see, when you're playing an Archenemy game, you cannot let your opponents have a lot of resources. If they have a lot of resources, they will run you over. So you have to deplete those resources. The problem is, most control cards in Commander are really aimed at 1v1 games, so they tend to only blow up one card on the board or a couple cards on the board. There's all kinds of ways players can disrupt us if we are not attacking their hands. Combo players especially may look at our deck and say, okay, cool, you're going to Archenemy for a bit, and then I'm going to come out with a 2-card combo. How do you beat 2-card combo decks? You attack their hand and prevent them from having the combo. So this is going to be what we're going to do. We are going to create an environment where all kinds of players, no matter what, are incentivized to remove us from the board first. We are the arch villain of this game, and we are planning on taking it over. And we have a couple ways of forcing our opponents to, well, get with the picture very quickly, and these are our tempo swing cards. These are Sepulchre Primordial, who will revive a creature from every opponent's graveyard. If you use this, you will be in the dominant position. Most everybody has powerful commanders. It's just the way the game works. Most everybody has powerful creatures supplementing your commander. The amount of times that an opponent has dropped their commander to the grave because they go, oh, well, I'm going to revive it with something so I don't have to pay command tax, and then I get to steal the thing with Sepulchre Primordial or force it to be in the command zone by using this. It's happened more often than I am comfortable really regaling. It's kind of sad. But the Primordials big thing is the tempo swing. Paying 7 mana to get 4 creatures, and they are the 4 best creatures, well, the 3 best creatures in each opponent's graveyard, is insane. I cast this, I take the best thing from your graveyard, and the best thing from your graveyard, and the best thing from your graveyard. Between the 3 opponents, you're gonna have something really powerful. And Diluvian Primordial does the same thing, but for instants and sorceries. And there are many times where the Diluvian Primordial is the far more powerful Primordial between the two, because once this thing touches the battlefield, if I am casting the best instant or sorcery from every player's graveyard, I may be casting a tutor from their grave. I may be casting a wheel, getting rid of the hand that they have built up if they've managed to stifle Kefka enough times. I could be getting rid of anything from their graves, and Diluvian will deny access to that card for the rest of the game because he will exile it as well. Sometimes Diluvian Primordial can be used to just get something your opponent wants to cast again with Underworld Breach and keep it out of their graveyard. You never know when that's going to be necessary. And finally, the biggest tempo swing is the aforementioned Kefka Dancing Mad. During your turn, he's got Indestructible, but the big thing with him is that at the beginning of your end step, you can exile a card at random from every opponent's graveyard and then cast any number of those cards as long as they are spells who can be cast. And each player who owns a spell that we cast this way loses life equal to its mana value. So if I cast a 7 mana spell from player 2's graveyard, player 2 takes 7 damage. Kefka is like if Diluvian and Sepulchre Primordial had a baby, but it didn't happen instantly. He is very, very powerful, and if our opponents don't get rid of him, he will proceed to snowball the game in our favor. Again, the idea is to force our opponents to get with the picture, and the picture is eliminate us first or die. This deck basically will excel at forcing our opponents to do that at a budget that I think everybody can find reasonable. As of right now, the deck is a little under $20, but after all the prices settle out, I imagine the price is going to be closer to that 15. But there is one more access that we need in order to play a proper game of Archenemy, and that is access to our own graveyard. We need to be able to replay cards so that later in the game, we are not exhausted of resources. So we are running an 8-card reanimation package extended from Xander's original 6-card reanimator package. These are Dread Return, because not only can we use this to revive a creature, but we can also sack 3 creatures in order to cast it again. Oftentimes, this is going to be bird tokens from Raven Man, or stuff that we've stolen from our opponents, or primordials that have already used their abilities. Then we have Coiling Rebirth, which can reanimate 1 creature and then gift a card to an opponent so that we can make a copy of that creature. Now, Coiling Rebirth may seem like it's a bit anti what our deck wants to do, but in practicing, there is a way that opponents have found, that I have found that opponents will try to deal with this deck, and that is by emptying their hands quickly and never allowing themselves to have a card in hand. If the Kefka deck is never able to draw cards, it will get exhausted very, very quickly. So Coiling Rebirth can give an opponent a card so that we can force them to discard it with Kefka so that we are able to maintain our own tempo. Ever After will reanimate 2 creatures from the grave at once. Blood for Bones will reanimate 1 creature from the grave and then put another in our hand. Victimize reanimates 2 creatures at once. Both of these cost a creature, but it is well worth it. Sauron, Lord of the Rings, will be able to reanimate any creature from our grave, and because he's coming in late game, he's normally very viable to be countered, but that's not really a viable strategy against Sauron because his ability to reanimate is a cast trigger. So we'll be able to generate a board of 9 power on him, 5 power on another creature, and then whatever we reanimate, and it's very hard to deal with without a stifle. Then we have Ayara, Widower of the Realm. She allows us to sacrifice creatures or artifacts to deal damage to people and gain life, which can be very important in a game of Archenemy, but the real reason she's here is so we can flip her to create Ayara the Furnace Queen. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we can return any artifact or creature from our graveyard to the battlefield and give it haste, and exile it at the beginning of the next end step. This is your late game clock spinner. This is what's going to accelerate the late game for you, so your opponents realize, oh, we have to kill you now, or you're just going to start emptying your grave into our life totals. Then we have the Archpriest of Shadows. With backup, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we can return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. Because it has backup, it grants this ability to a creature on our board, like, say, our Kefka. This makes it very easy to revive creatures, and when you look at our draw package, we're going to be using things like Raven Man tokens or cards from our draw package for this backup counter. Archpriest of Shadows is a very powerful card that I think more people need to put a little more respect on. That said, that is it for the core strategy of the deck. We are making people discard. We are creating situations where we are the archenemy. How are we going to draw more cards out of our deck besides Kefka? Let's talk about that. So we're running an 11 card draw package, and this should allow us to dig through our deck at a pretty decent click. We're going to be running cards that can loot when they swing, like Looter Ilkor, Shoreline Looter, Vanguard Suppressor, and Wharf Infiltrator, and Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. All of these are evasive in their own ways, and they also allow us to draw and discard, meaning we can reanimate things from the grave very quickly using their abilities. We also have Shadow Mage Infiltrator, who can just draw cards when it hits, and has Fear, so it's very hard to block. All of these give us the ability to draw cards with combat, and they also increase the power of cards like Archpriest of Shadows. And because these cards get through our deck via combat, we're also going to run Bident of Thassa and Coastal Piracy so that we can draw cards when we hit people with our creatures. Our commander is also a combat commander, so it's very likely that we're going to end up hitting people with our commander at some point during the game too. Let's also run a Vanguard Suppressor. Overcosted as it is a thieving magpie that can copy itself, and that is powerful in its own right. So let's go ahead and make sure we have access to that. Remember that Shoreline Looter will be able to keep cards in your hand late game once we've hit the threshold in the grave, which is very easy to do with Kefka. And Malcolm will be able to eventually start free casting cards from the top of our deck with its ability. But we need other ways to loot as well, so we're going to run Obsessive Stitcher, Vohar Vidalian Desecrator, and Merfolk Looter. Each of these can tap to draw a card and discard a card. Vohar is able to recast instants and sorceries from our grave, and Obsessive Stitcher is able to reanimate creatures from our grave in her own right. All of these should be able to let us dig through our deck at a very good click, and a lot of them do throw cards back in our graveyard, so we are able to reanimate them later if we need to cheat something out instead of paying hard mana for it. That said, that does it for the draw engine. We need to now talk about removal. As we are playing a proper Archenemy build, we are going to be running a bit more removal than the Xander deck did, because we are not running a 7-mana commander. We are cutting things out of the lands and cutting things out of the ramp section to make room for this. But Dusk Mangler makes everybody discard a card and lose 4 life and sack a creature when it touches the battlefield. Vile Mutilator makes everybody sacrifice a creature and an enchantment when it touches the battlefield. Demon's Disciple, Plague Crafter, and Accursed Marauder all make each opponent sacrifice a creature, and we sacrifice just the creature we casted. Gaius von Belzar from the new Final Fantasy set makes everybody sacrifice a token of their choice, or a non-token creature of their choice, or a enchantment of their choice. So more black enchantment removal is always great. Eldest Reborn allows us to force everybody to sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, and then discard a card, and then revive any creature from the grave. Dark Intimation says each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, just like the Eldest Reborn, then discards a card, just like Eldest Reborn. Then we return any creature or planeswalker from our graveyard to our hand, then draw a card. Very close to what happens when we cast Eldest Reborn. Then we are also going to run Rankled Master of Pranks, as he can make everybody discard cards, he can make everybody draw cards, which can be important at some points as well, and he can also force every player to sacrifice a creature. We're also going to run Feed the Swarm and Abrade as basic ways to quickly remove any artifacts, enchantments, or creatures off the battlefield. We're going to run Refute and Negate as some basic counter spells, and we are going to have Hostage Taker in here as well to give us access to exile-style removal, and it also allows us to use the creature that we steal with this as well, or creature or artifact. It gets rid of either of them, which is perfectly fine by us. For our board wipes, just like in Xander, we are running a Necromantic Selection, but this is going to be supplemented by a Too Greedily Too Deep. I've chosen both of these because they allow us to have a board state at the end of the board wipe. Necromantic Selection blows up all creatures and then revives a creature from the grave. We can use this to take commanders as well, and they can't put them back in the command zone because of timing restrictions. And Too Greedily Too Deep revives a creature and then blows up all creatures on the battlefield. Well, it revives a creature, and then that creature deals damage to all creatures on the battlefield, which is effectively the same thing. And that's all the removal. Now we just got to talk about mana, and thankfully it's not going to be as expansive of a mana package as I had to build for Xander. Now, when we built Xander, we had a lot of 4-mana rocks because we just desperately needed them in order to be able to play the dude at all. But here, we don't really have the same restriction. We're still going to want to run Burnished Heart and Wayfarer's Bauble and Sad Robot because they do allow us to get lands on the battlefield, and that is the safest way for us to ramp, but we can lean more into our 2-mana rocks like Fire Diamond, Charcoal Diamond, and Sky Diamond in order to accelerate our mana. Obviously, if you've got access to the Talismans or the Signets, use those instead, but at this deck's budget restriction, these are the best mana rocks we can have for the amount of mana that we are spending on them. Now, for 4-mana rocks, we only want to run Hedron Archive and Stone Speaker Crystal, as they can replace themselves later in the game, and the Speaker Crystal can get rid of people's graveyards, which is super important, since we are filling people's graveyards up, and we desperately need to make sure that they are not able to reanimate things against us. Let's also throw in a Worn Power Stone as a super quick way to get a lot of extra mana, and an Honored Heirloom, since this 3-mana rock can also get rid of cards in people's graveyards, allowing us to prevent our opponents from reanimating cards against us. The amount of times that an Honored Heirloom has been one of the best ways that I've had access to blow up things in graveyards is astounding. I love this card so very much. Then we get to go to the basic lands, 3 islands, 2 mountains, and 7 swamps. Basically the same basic land structure we were running in Xander, with very similar lands in the Dimir category. We are running River of Tears, a very underrated but very great dual land. Sunken Hollow, Choked Estuary, Tainted Isle, all these come into play untapped. Temple of Deceit comes into play tapped, but it does allow us to scry. For Izzet lands, we are running Temple of Epiphany as our tapped land, and Frostboil Snarl and Ferris Lake as our untapped lands. And then in the Rakdos category, we have the tapped land of Temple of Malice, and then Shadowblood Ridge, Tainted Peak, Foreboding Ruins, and Smoldering Marsh as our untapped lands. For Omni lands, we are running Command Tower and Exotic Orchard as our untapped lands, and a Path of Ancestry as our tapped land, since when we play Kefka, we'll be able to get a scry off of that, and that should allow us to curate our draw from Kefka a little bit. Then for fetching lands, we are running Evolving Wilds, Ash Barrens, Terramorphic Expanse, and Escape Tunnel as the basic crack these immediately get a land cards. Seething Landscape because it can be cracked to get a land, and also it can be cycled if we get mana flooded, and it comes into play untapped. And Myriad Landscape because it is a land that allows us to ramp, which is not the most important thing in a deck like this, but it can be good since Kefka is a target for a lot of removal. Then for utility lands, we have a Port of Carfell, so we can revive cards in our own graveyard, a Barren Moor, Lonely Sandbar, and Forgotten Cave as ways to cycle and get different cards in our hand if we get mana flooded. Then we have Pit of Offerings to get rid of cards in people's graveyards as we need, and a Rogue's Passage to make sure that our Kefka can get in there if people have, say, Death Touch blockers that we don't want to be dealing with that day. And, well, that does it for the entirety of the deck. It's a pretty simple deck, and it's following a very simple template if you've already seen the Xander deck. That said, we do want to make sure that we know how to play it, so let's go ahead and get into that. You know, as long as a hand has some ramp, I think it's probably good to keep it in this deck, and honestly, with Honored Heirloom to patch up the deck's problems, and Hedron Archive as a later game ramp spell, and a Tiny Bones, I'd be willing to keep this hand. Why not? Let's go ahead and keep our hand, play a Foreboding Ruins, and pass. We go to the next turn, and let's go ahead and get a tapped land out of the way. Let's play Terramorphic Expanse, crack it, and we already know that we're not going to be able to Myriad Landscape for anything, so let's go ahead and just get an island. Well, the Myriad Landscape will still be able to get islands if need be. Let's go to turn 3. Let's play this swamp, and then let's go ahead and tap out, play our Honored Heirloom, and pass into turn 4. Hey, there's the Myriad Landscape I knew we weren't going to be able to use very well. There's the mountain. Let's go ahead and tap out and get Kefka on the board. Kefka is going to make everybody discard a card. We're going to get rid of our Myriad Landscape. They're going to get rid of a card each. At this stage of the game, it's safe to say that at least one person is discarding a non-land, so we're going to draw 2 cards off of Kefka. and then pass to our opponents. Then we move into the next turn, and, ooh, Dax Duplicate. That's going to be fun. Here's what I think we do. I think we play the Rogue's Passage down, and we attack with Kefka, making everybody discard a card. We are going to discard Kefka Dancing Mad. Is that what we want? No, we are going to pay 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Tiny Bones. That's the move. We're going to play Tiny Bones. There we go. And then when Kefka swings, everybody's going to discard a card, and we are going to discard probably the Hedron Archive. I like everything else in the hand. So we'll get rid of the Hedron Archive and draw a card. We'll draw 2 because we know we're taking those cards. Okay. Let's see here. Tiny Bones will definitely steal cards from our opponents. Let's assume that they are decent cards, but we're not going to use them in the playtest because it's just not really doable. It's very hard to actually playtest that way. And then we're going to pay this many, and we're going to play Dax Duplicate, and we're going to create a copy of Kefka, and we are going to let our original Kefka hit the command zone and die. So we create this untapped Kefka that's going to make everybody discard a card, and then we are going to, I guess we get rid of, do we get rid of Larceny? Larceny is probably the one to get rid of, and then we'll draw 2 off that. There we go. Then we move into our next turn. We've stolen 9 cards with Tiny Bones, which is good enough, but we may want to do more. And in fact, the way I think we're going to do more is entering combat. Well, we can play the Exotic Orchard. And then we're going to enter combat and swing with Kefka. And do we have a creature in our grave? We don't have a creature in our grave. So we're going to have to fix that. We're going to swing with Kefka, and we are going to make everybody discard a card, and we're going to draw 2 cards. And then, during main phase 2, we are going to pay 4? I guess we're going to have to do it that way, right? 4 would do... I really want to cast Kefka Dancing Mad. So, yeah, we're just going to pay... We're going to pay everything. And we're going to play Kefka Dancing Mad. Technically, there is a world where we sacrifice the Kefka clone in order to summon Kefka Dancing Mad from the grave. But I'm okay with it being set up this way. And then we know that we're having to get rid of the escape tunnel as we end our turn. Dancing Mad is going to freely cast a spell from our opponent's grave. We don't know what it's doing. We don't know what cards Tiny Bones has stolen. We just know that it's stuff that has happened. We are technically further ahead than what it looks like. Tiny Bones has stolen 12 cards. Kefka has stolen 3 cards. But we have no actual idea which cards are gone and at what rate right now. We don't really have a way of knowing that. So, and also remember, Kefka only really has the pool of cards that we threw to the graveyard before Tiny Bones. So, there is a chance that we don't have a whole lot. We can force the matter. We can play the Choked Estuary. We can force the matter a bit by playing Plaguecrafter and making everybody lose things, but it's not really super necessary. I think at this stage of the game, maybe the move is... God, people just don't have things in their hands at this point, do they? I think it's swing with Kefka Court Mage, make everybody discard a card, do our draw thing, and then I think people have lost enough cards in their hand that this should just wipe everything out. During your turn... Alright, so we can't track Tiny Bones, so let's just go ahead and Necromantic Selection everything away. And we are going to revive Dancing Mad as our Kefka. Ideally, players should be completely spent on all resources right now. We're going to get rid of Burnished Heart when we discard our cards at the end of the turn. Necromantic Selection should put some cards in the grave for Kefka Dancing Mad to see, and Tiny Bones is non-bowing with Kefka, so we're basically here. Our opponents are spent of all resources, and we can just kind of go forward from here. Because once we enter our turn, we can play the Temple, Fire Diamond, we're just going to throw that to the bottom of the library. We don't need that anymore. We can just play our commander and make everybody discard again. Like, it doesn't hurt us to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Play Kefka. Everybody discard a card. We'll discard... Not Vanguard Suppressor. I kind of want Vanguard Suppressor. We'll discard Ayara. We can get her back. And then we'll draw 2 cards from that. And I don't like this Forgotten Cave, so we're going to discard it and draw a new card. And at the end of the turn, we'll be discarding the Sky Diamond. And then we get a free cast off Kefka again. So it's turn 8, and we are... How many cards have we taken from our opponents? Like, total, we've taken 24 cards out of our opponent's hands by this point of the game. And on top of that, Kefka and Dancing Mad have been able to just kind of wreak havoc on people's graves. We've stolen a bunch of spells to cast. We're basically playing just with our spells because we have them on curve and we can do it. But, like, remember that in a deck that can steal, like this deck, we've taken whatever best cards our opponents have in their graves and out of their hands, and we've probably had a chance to cast them. We can't really test for that, though, so we're going to have to end the test here, knowing that the deck has gone this far ahead of our opponents as it stands. So all that's really left to do is figure out what to do if you want to upgrade the deck. So for upgrading this deck, there are some things you want to put in from the original Xander upgrade list, but there are some things that are just far more powerful in this deck. I think this deck benefits more from the Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves combo than Xander did because Kefka's a little more central to the deck's strategy. And you can put the Nicol Boluses in from the Xander upgrade if you want. They do have the ability to supplement the deck, but remember, they do get less powerful as our opponents have fewer cards in their hand, so just keep that in mind. Then we can add in Drown in the Lock, a great counterspell that can also get rid of things in graveyards, a Rakdos Charm to get rid of things in players' graveyards as well, and it can also blow up an artifact. Each creature deals a damage to its controller. We can use this to get rid of token players very quickly. Vandal Blast can get rid of problematic artifact setups. Very, very strong, and it just got another reprint in Final Fantasy. Geth's Grimoire is probably one of the most powerful cards we can put in, because every single time we use Kefka, we're going to draw 3 cards. Monument to Endurance, anytime we discard a card, we get to either draw a card, make a treasure, or make every opponent burn. Very powerful in this deck. Relic of Sauron, super strong ramp piece. I think this card can do a lot of work in Kefka, and it also has a draw discard ability if we run out of cards. Then you can also supplement the Reanimation package with some stronger cards like Animate Dead and Reanimate, but here's where the contentious cards come in. I think that if you really want to play this as an Archenemy deck, then Breach the Multiverse is going to do a ton of work for you. Make each player mill 10 cards, and then for each player, revive a creature from their graveyard. That's already huge, but if you combine this with cards like Turgid and Valgavoth, it's going to be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to get ahead of you. Turgid allows Kefka to not only get rid of the cards in people's hands, but also turn them into cards on your board. Bear in mind, if you play a Turgid, everybody is going to try to kill you. But also, I mean, damn, look at her. She could get it. Like, just come on. Come on. You know that you want to use Turgid. You know you want to be that villain. You want to be the asshole. Valgavoth Terror Eater also, just with his ability to steal cards, is so goddamn good. I highly recommend Valgavoth in any deck with Reanimator. That all said, thank you all for watching. I hope you had a wonderful time. I have this deck built in $15 format, but I think I'm going to build a full power version while I am on my trip to Florida for the Marcy Rankton protest. So look forward to that. That's going to be kind of evil. That said, thank you all for watching. I hope you all had a wonderful time watching this just absolutely horrendous pile of cards do things to an imaginary opponent who isn't really there. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Hopefully you had a wonderful, wonderful week so far, and I will see you all in the next one. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.